The ad didn't say much. Perimeter Integrity Specialist. It sounded important, sterile. The kind of job title invented by an HR department that gets paid to rename janitor to Environmental Hygiene Coordinator. But the pay was $48 an hour. Cash. For walking. In the middle of nowhere, Oregon. I'd driven 3 hours from Portland, my own '09 Civic rattling with every pothole on the unmarked service road. The campus itself was called AuraTech. It looked less like a tech company and more like a minimalist cult headquarters. 3 enormous, windowless domes of polished black basalt, connected by elevated glass tubes. They just hummed. A low, vibrational thrum you felt in your teeth. My interview was a 10-minute video call with a woman named Ms. Vane, who never blinked. My training was a single laminated sheet of paper and a 5-minute walkthrough with a day shift guy who smelled like stale coffee and fear. "It's just a loop," he'd said, his eyes glued to the gravel path at our feet. 3 miles. You do it 4 times. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 12 miles total. The path was the weirdest part. It wasn't asphalt or dirt. It was this fine, white, almost iridescent gravel. It crunched underfoot with a sound like breaking glass. The path was exactly 4 feet wide and ringed the entire 500-acre property. On one side, the manicured, sterile lawn leading up to the black domes. On the other, the dark, dense, ancient forest of the Pacific Northwest. "So, what am I looking for? Trespassers?" I'd asked. He finally looked at me. His eyes were shot with yellow. "No one trespasses. Animals? Breaches in the fence?" "There is no fence." He pointed to the laminated card. "Just the rules. You read the rules?" I had. They were simple. Arrive at 21:45. Clock in at the security hut. Begin first circuit at 2200 hours sharp. Maintain a steady, consistent pace. You are provided one high-lumen flashlight. Use it only to illuminate the path ahead. Do not shine it into the woods. Do not shine it at the domes. You do not stop. You do not run. You do not pause. You do not, under any circumstances, step off the white gravel. Report anomalies only after a circuit is complete, via the provided handheld. "What counts as an anomaly?" I asked. He just shrugged and walked away. The first night was fine. It was just walking. The white gravel path seemed to glow under the moonlight, making the flashlight almost unnecessary. The air was cool and smelled of pine and damp earth. The only sound was the shhh-crunch of my boots and the constant, low-frequency thrum from the domes. I did my 4 loops. 12 miles. My feet hurt. I clocked out. Easy money. The second night was the same. The third the same. I started to get bored. I listened to podcasts. I started timing my loops, trying to beat my own record. I was a professional walker. It was on the 4th night that I broke the rules. Not a big one. Just rule #4. I was on my 2nd circuit, on the back side of the property. The forest here was at its thickest, pressing right up against the edge of the gravel. The trees were so tall they blocked out the moon. It was just me, the ribbon of white path, and the deep, total blackness of the woods, and I heard a noise. It wasn't a snap. It wasn't a growl. It was a click, like a camera shutter. But wet. It sounded like it came from about 20 feet into the woods. Click-click-whirr. I stopped. I know, rule number 5. But I stopped. I stood dead still, my own breathing suddenly feeling deafening. Click-click-whirr. It was closer. I could feel the hair on my arms stand up. Every horror movie instinct screamed, "Walk away." But the $48 an hour part of my brain, combined with sheer, stupid curiosity, made me do it. I raised the flashlight. I pointed it straight into the darkness. At first, I saw nothing. Just the tangle of ferns, the massive trunk of a Douglas fir, and the shine of wet leaves. "Hello?" I whispered, and then I saw it. I wasn't pointing the beam at it, but the splash from the light was just enough. It was hanging from a low branch. A dead deer. That wasn't the scary part. This is Oregon. The scary part was that it was perfectly, almost surgically skinned. Not a drop of blood on the forest floor beneath it. Just a pale, glistening, pink-white carcass. But that still wasn't the part that made my stomach turn to ice. The head was gone. And in its place, someone had lashed an old, porcelain-faced doll's head to the neck stump. It was tied on with what looked like zip ties. Its little glass eyes were wide. Its painted red mouth was chipped into a perfect smiling "Oh." And as I stood there, frozen, breaking at least 3 rules at once, the doll's head slowly, mechanically, swiveled on the deer's neck. It turned, independent of the body. It turned until its dead glass eyes were looking directly at me. Click-click-whirr. I didn't log it on the handheld. I didn't say a word. I just turned, and I walked. Faster than a steady, consistent pace. I finished my shift, my boots crunching the gravel, the only sound in the world. Shh-crunch, shhh-crunch, click-click-whirr. When I got to the security hut at 6 a.m., I was shaking so hard I could barely clock out. The day shift guy was there, pouring himself a coffee. He didn't look up. "Rough night?" I saw something. "In the woods." "A deer." He sighed, stirring his coffee. "Rule number 4, man. It was wrong. It had a doll's head." He stopped stirring. He finally looked at me, and his jaundiced eyes were full of something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't fear. It was pity. "Ah," he said, taking a sip. "So you've met one of the auditors." "The what?" "Just a piece of advice," he said, turning away. "You're paid to walk. You're not paid to look. And you're definitely not paid to be seen." I drove home as the sun came up, the thrum of the dome still vibrating in my bones. I slept for 10 hours. When I woke up, there was a package on my apartment doorstep. It was a small, brown cardboard box with no return address. Inside, nestled in bubble wrap, was a single, chipped, porcelain doll's arm. I held the porcelain arm in my hand. It was heavy. Ice cold. My apartment is on the 12th floor. You need a key fob to get into the lobby, another key fob for the elevator, and then my deadbolt. I don't get packages. I don't have friends in the city. I checked the brown box again. No stamps. No shipping label. Someone had placed it there. They knew where I lived. The thought was a physical jolt, like touching a live wire. This wasn't just some freak show in the woods. AuraTech. The Auditors. They had my address. They knew where I slept. I should have thrown the arm in the trash. I should have thrown my keys in the trash, packed my bag, and just driven. But I looked at my bank statement. $74.31. Rent was due in 3 days. The $48 an hour wasn't a salary. It was a chain. I went back to work. I put the doll's arm in the glove compartment of my Civic. I don't know why. It felt important. Like I was supposed to have it. Like forgetting it would be rude. When I got to the security hut, the day shift guy was waiting for me. He didn't look up from his coffee. "You came back," he stated. It wasn't a question. "I need the money," I said, my voice sounding weak. He finally looked up. His yellow-shot eyes seemed to catalog me. "They all need the money." He pushed the heavy flashlight and the handheld radio across the desk. A piece of advice. For free this time. I waited. Last night you broke Rule 4. You looked. They don't like being looked at. But you're alive, so they just introduced themselves. Tonight. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Tonight you focus on Rule 6. You understand me? Rule 6 is the only one that really matters. It's the only one that keeps me what? He just shook his head. Integral. It keeps you integral. Now get going. It's 21:58. The walk from the hut to the start of the path was the longest of my life. 10 p.m. The gate hummed shut behind me. The shhh-crunch of my boots on the white gravel sounded like thunder in the silence. The hum from the domes felt different. It wasn't just in my teeth anymore. It was in my chest. A low, pulsing pressure, like a giant thumb pushing on my sternum. I kept my flashlight beam glued to the gravel. 4 feet wide. My entire world. I didn't listen to a podcast. I listened to my own breathing. I listened to the shhh-crunch. I passed the spot. The spot where I'd seen the deer. I kept my eyes forward. My head locked. I was a statue from the waist up. Click-click-whirr. I heard it. It was right there. Just to my left. In the blackness. I did not stop. I did not look. I just walked. Shh-crunch. Click-click-whirr. It was keeping pace with me. Then, a new sound. A baby crying. It was faint at first, then louder. A desperate, terrified wail. It was coming from the ferns, not 10 feet into the woods. Every paternal instinct I didn't even know I had screamed at me to stop, help, look. Rule number 4. Rule #5. I clenched my jaw. I kept walking. Shh-crunch. The crying moved. It stayed perfectly parallel to my position on the path. Wah. Wah. It was a horrible, agonizing sound. It's not real, I whispered to myself. My voice was a dry croak. The crying instantly stopped. Absolute silence. The hum of the domes. The crunch of my feet, and then a new voice. A perfect, digital mimicry of my voice. It's not real, it whispered. It came from the exact spot the crying had been. And my blood turned to ice. I started to run. I took 3 fast, loping steps before the laminate card flashed in my head. Rule number 5. You do not run. I forced my legs back into a steady walk. My heart was a trapped bird. I was shaking. I had to get the circuit finished. I came around the bend on the property's north side, the one that ran parallel to the highway, miles away, and I stopped. I know the rule. I know. But the path was gone. It just ended. A perfect, clean line. In front of me was a 20-foot gap of black, bubbling, sucking mud. It smelled like sulfur and copper. And on the other side of the mud, the white gravel path picked up again, pristine and perfect, continuing its loop. I was trapped. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't go back. That would mean walking against the circuit. And sitting right in the middle of the mud pit, perfectly clean, was a single porcelain doll. It was a little girl in a faded blue dress. Its head was tilted, its glass eyes looking right at me. As I stood there, frozen, my flashlight beam trembling, the doll in the mud slowly raised one tiny, white porcelain arm. It gave a little, jerky wave. And then, from the darkness behind me, on the path I had just walked. Click-click-whirr. And from the darkness in front of me, on the path I was supposed to be on. Click-click-whirr. They were on the path with me. I was frozen. My world had shrunk to a 300-foot strip of white gravel, bookended by nightmares. Click-click-whirr. Behind me. Click-click-whirr. In front, across the pit. The one behind me was closer. The clicks were frantic, impatient. Click-click-click-whirr. Rule number 5. You do not pause. I was pausing. I was a dead man. I broke rule number 4 again. I had to. I spun, shining the high-lumen beam back down the path I just walked. It was wrong. I saw it for less than a second, but it burned into my retinas. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't a person. It was an assemblage. It was tall, maybe 8 feet, and jerking in ways physics shouldn't allow. I saw Porcelain, a dozen doll arms and legs welded together to form a torso. I saw a wet, pinkish mass that looked like sinew, holding it all together. I saw a bicycle wheel, rusty and bent, spinning in its center. Where it was on the gravel. Its feet, 2 sharpened lengths of rebar, were crunching on the path, coming fast. I snapped back to the gap. The doll in the mud. Its little arms still waving. Wave. Pause. Wave. The path was the trap. Staying on it would lead me into the thing behind me. Crossing the mud was, what? Stepping off the gravel. Rule number 6. The ultimate sin.my radio crackled to life, so loud it made me jump. It wasn't static. It was Ms. Vane. Her voice was as sterile and cold as the domes. Rule 6 Specialist. Integrity is paramount. The perimeter must not be breached. The path is gone. I yelled, my voice cracking. It's broken. There's a pit. There was a half-second of silence. Then, her voice, without a single change in inflection. The path is integral. The path is not broken. You are. The thing behind me was 50 feet away. I could smell it. It smelled like a new tire. It smelled like spoiled milk. I looked at the mud. The doll. The click-click-whirring on the other side, waiting. I looked at the woods. The deep, total blackness. The day shift guy's voice. Rule 6 is the only one that really matters. It keeps you integral. What if he didn't mean integral, as in whole? What if he meant integral, as in part of the system? The auditor was 20 feet away. I could feel the displacement of the air as it lunged out. I had no choice. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't go back. I couldn't stay still. I took one last look at the pristine white gravel, my prison, and I stepped off it, not into the mud. I lunged to my right, crashing through the ferns, into the absolute, forbidden darkness of the woods. The instant my boot touched the soft, damp earth, 2 things happened simultaneously. First, the thrum. The constant, bone-deep hum from the black domes stopped. The silence was so sudden and so total that it was a noise in itself. It was a vacuum. I stumbled, my equilibrium gone, and fell to one knee on the pine needles. Second, everything else stopped. The click-click-whirr from the path silenced. The bubbling from the mud pit ceased. The waving arm of the doll froze. The world was a photograph. I was on my hands and knees, breathing hard, my own pulse roaring in my ears. I looked back at the path. The auditor, the thing, was frozen solid, 2 feet from where I had been standing. It was caught in a mid-step lunge, its rebar foot held high. A grotesque, impossible sculpture of junk and meat. The silence held for 3 long, agonizing seconds. Then, a new sound. It came from the main dome. It wasn't a hum. It was a toll. A single, deafening, metallic clang. A deep, resonating dung that shook the ground so hard I felt my teeth rattle. It was the sound of a giant iron bell, the kind that calls a city to war. My handheld radio crackled. Ms. Vane's voice. It wasn't calm anymore. It wasn't sterile. It was sharp. It was furious. Anomaly detected. Integrity compromised. Subject is off path. Containment protocol initiated. I was still looking at the frozen auditor on the path. Slowly, slowly, its head, a tangled mass of wires and doll faces, swiveled. The click-click-whirr started again, but it was low. It was different. It turned away from the path. It turned away from the mud. Its multiple, chipped glass eyes turned, click, and locked directly onto me. It was no longer bound by the rules of the gravel. And neither was I. For a second, the world was just those 2 points of light, the multiple, fractured glass eyes of the auditor, and the single, terrified, wide-eyed gaze of my own. The click became a snap. A sound like a giant's vertebra cracking. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I just moved. I pivoted on my heel and threw myself deeper into the forest, away from the path, away from the frozen monster. The moment I moved, the spell broke. Behind me, an explosion of sound. Not a click-whirr. A crash-scrape-whirr. The thing was moving, and it was moving fast. It wasn't just walking anymore. It was tearing through the undergrowth. I heard a sound like a wet tree branch snapping. No, like a small tree being broken in half. I ran. I ran like I'd never run in my life. The forest was a nightmare. I wasn't on a path. I was in the Real Pacific Northwest. Roots snaked out of the earth like grasping hands, tripping me. Low-hanging branches, slick with moss, whipped my face and tore at my jacket. My flashlight beam was useless. It just cut a frantic, bouncing tunnel of green and brown, illuminating nothing but the next thing I was about to hit. Crash snapware. It was so close. I could smell it now. The spoiled milk and ozone, but something else. Something like burned sugar. A sick, sweet, cloying smell. I burst through a curtain of ferns, my foot snagged on a root, and I went down, hard. I face-planted into the mud and pine needles. The flashlight flew from my hand, skidding a few feet away, its beam pointing straight up, illuminating the canopy like a stage light. I lay there for a half-second, stunned. The wind knocked out of me. My handheld radio crackled at my belt. Subject has decelerated, Ms. Vane's voice reported, as if I were a data point. Proximity alert. I rolled, scrambling for the light. My fingers brushed it. Click where it was standing over me. It was looking down. The moonlight that filtered through the canopy glinted off its assembled parts. I could see it clearly now. The bicycle wheel was its hip. The sinewy, pinkish mass was muscle, raw and exposed, wrapped around a spine of rebar. And the head, it wasn't just doll faces. It was a cluster of them, fused together with melted plastic and zip ties, all facing different directions. One face, a little boy with painted-on freckles, was looking right at me. It raised one of its arms. This one was a tangle of rusty exhaust pipes and more dull limbs, ending in a sharpened piece of rebar. It raised it high, like it was about to spear me. No, 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 please! I whimpered, a pathetic, useless sound. It paused. Its head cluster tilted. Click! The little boy face swiveled. The porcelain doll face from the deer carcass swiveled to the front. The one with the chipped, mouth. It spoke. In my voice. The exact digital mimicry from the path. Please! It whispered. It's not real. It lunged. I rolled, screaming, grabbing the flashlight. The rebar spear plunged into the mud where my chest had been, a sound like a hydraulic piston. SSS thunk. I crab walked backward, kicking, my boots finding no purchase. Get away! I yelled, and I did the only thing I could. I shined the high-lumen beam directly into its face. It shrieked. It wasn't a mechanical noise. It wasn't a click. It was a high, thin, biological wail of pain. A sound that couldn't possibly come from porcelain and steel. It recoiled, its multi-limbed body spasming, its rebar limbs flailing and cutting gashes in the trees. I had found a weapon. I scrambled to my feet. Back! Get back! I yelled, keeping the beam locked on its head. Cluster. It hissed, a sound like steam escaping a broken pipe, and it retreated, crashing backward into the ferns. I stood there, panting, my arms shaking, the flashlight beam a lifeline. I had a chance. The parking lot. The hut. It was maybe half a mile. If I cut through the woods. I turned to run, and I saw the path. I'd run in a circle. I was only 20 yards from the white gravel loop. But it wasn't the path I'd left. It wasn't white gravel anymore. The entire 3-mile, 4-foot wide loop was glowing. It was a ribbon of pure, white, blinding light. It wasn't just lit up, the gravel itself was the source. It was a perimeter of fire, a branding iron laid across the land. The heat coming off it was so intense it made the air shimmer. The leaves on the trees closest to it were curling and smoking. I was trapped. I was on the outside. The monster was in here with me. And the path? The path was a fence. My radio crackled. Ms. Vane again. Her voice was steady, calm, and laced with something that sounded like satisfaction. Perimeter integrity established. The field is active. Do not attempt to cross, specialist. The gravel is now purifying. I heard a crash behind me. The wailing had stopped. Specialist, she continued, her voice like ice. You are no longer an employee. You are a biological component off loop. The auditor will reintegrate you. Reintegrate me. The word was so clean. So corporate. It meant, take me apart. It meant, use my pieces. It meant the doll's arm in my car wasn't a warning, it was an invoice. The glowing, white-hot path was a 3-mile long, 4-foot wide cauterizing iron, sealing me in. The perimeter integrity wasn't to keep people out. It was to keep components. In doubt I backed away from the heat, my skin prickling. The trees behind me were a pit of shadows. The auditor was in there. Silent. Waiting. My flashlight beam was a sword. I held it up, sweeping it back and forth. The auditor was gone. The wailing had stopped. But it wasn't a retreat. It was a repositioning. It was a predator, and I was in its enclosure. I was in a 500-acre pen. I had to move. I couldn't stay here, pinned between the burning path and the darkness. Which way? There was no out. The parking lot, my car, the world, it was all on the other side of that blinding, sizzling ribbon of light that left only one direction. In, towards the center. Towards the 3 black domes that hummed with a silence that was worse than the noise. I turned my back to the path. The heat was a physical presence, pushing me, and I started walking. I moved slowly, my head on a swivel, my flashlight beam cutting methodical arcs. Shh-crunch. I froze. The sound. My sound. The sound of boots on the white gravel. But I wasn't on the gravel. I was on soft, damp earth. The sound came again. From my left. Shh-crunch. I snapped the light in that direction. Nothing. Just a dense thicket of blackberry bushes. Who's there? I whispered. Shh-crunch. It was closer. It was mimicking me. It was learning. I backed away, moving faster. Okay. I was trying to keep my panic down. The light was my only advantage. The auditor hated the light. Click-click-whirr. It was in the bushes. I saw a glint of porcelain. A single, glass eye. I fixed the beam on it. The high, thin, biological wail ripped through the night. It hated the light. It crashed backward, away from me. I smiled. A tiny, hysterical bark of a laugh. That's right. You don't like that, do you? I was an idiot. I was arrogant. Because as I kept the beam pinned on the first auditor, the one that was shrieking and spasming, I heard a new sound. From my right, a different sound, not a click. Not a word. It was a tinkle. The sound of a tiny, tinny music box. It was playing. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. I spun, my beam leaving the first auditor. The shrieking stopped. The beam landed on the new one. It was smaller. It was fast. It was made of dozens of children's toys, all fused together with that same pink, glistening sinew. A rocking horse had formed its face. A set of CNC pull strings hung from its chest. It moved on 3 legs, each a pogo stick, sharpened to a point. It was hopping towards me. Tinkle, 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 boing. Tinkle, 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 boing. The first auditor, now free from the light, crashed through the woods on my left. I was flanked. I yelled, a sound of pure terror, and sprayed the light back and forth. Shriek! Tinkle! Shriek! Tinkle! I was a stagehand with a spotlight, holding 2 demons at bay. They recoiled from the beam, hissing, but they were hurting me. Get back! I was stumbling backward, faster and faster, waving the light. I didn't look where I was going. My back hit something. It wasn't a tree. It was hard. Perfectly smooth. And so cold it burned through my jacket. I didn't need to look. I knew I had backed right up against the hull of the main dome. I panted, my back pressed against the cold basalt, the flashlight beam playing over the 2 things at the treeline. And they stopped. They stood, just at the edge of the woods, maybe 50 feet away. The big one clicked and whirred, its many-faced head swiveling. The little one boinged and tinkled, its music box song now warped and slowing down. They wouldn't come any closer. I was standing on the manicured, sterile lawn that ringed the domes. There was a new rule. They were not allowed on the grass. I was safe, my radio crackled. Ms. Vane's voice. A predictable component. It seeks the sterile zone. I looked at the 2 monsters, just standing there, like dogs at a property line. They were waiting. What do you want? I said, my voice shaking. Processing. She replied. I looked at the black, featureless wall of the dome I was leaning against. There's no door. Incorrect. I turned. I ran my trembling, free hand over the smooth, cold basalt. It was seamless. The path is for integrity. Vane's voice said, now seemingly coming from the dome itself. The woods are for assembly. The facility is for integration. A deep, metallic clang vibrated through my spine. A hairline crack of red light appeared in the basalt, directly in front of my face. It ran 10 feet up and 4 feet across. With a pneumatic hiss that sent cold mist billowing out, a perfect rectangle of the dome wall began to slide open. It wasn't a door. It was a hatch. It opened onto a corridor of absolute, total darkness. An artificial, light-eating void. From within that darkness, a new voice. A child's voice. Come on in, it whispered. We've been waiting for you. We have all your pieces. The air from the hatch was cold. Not forest cold. It was a dead, chemical, refrigerated cold. It smelled like rubbing alcohol and that static electricity smell you get from an old CRT television. We have all your pieces. I looked back at the treeline. The 2 auditors were perfectly still. The big one, with its cluster of faces, clicked. The pogo stick one tinkled. They weren't just waiting. They were containing. They were the sheepdogs, and I was the sheep. This hatch was the what? The shearing shed? The slaughterhouse? The child's voice giggled, A sound that came from the blackness and seemed to echo inside my own skull. The last one didn't want to come in either. The last one? I stammered, my back still pressed to the cold basalt. The one who left his arm. The voice said, sounding perfectly reasonable. From deep within the darkness, I heard a tiny, distinct sound. Tink. The sound of a single, small, porcelain object being dropped onto a hard floor. The doll's arm in my car. It wasn't a warning for me. It was a souvenir from the last guy who stood where I was standing. My radio crackled. Ms. Vane. The component is stalling. Expedite. As if on command, the big auditor at the treeline took one, heavy, crunching step onto the manicured grass. The grass sizzled. A puff of greasy, black smoke erupted from under its rebar foot. The auditor let out that biological shriek and ripped its foot back, its whole body spasming. My blood ran cold. The grass. It wasn't a safe zone. It was another fence. A low-voltage, non-lethal, for me, barrier to keep me on this tiny concrete and grass island. I was in a funnel. The burning path, the hurting auditors, the sizzling grass, it all led to this one black, rectangular void. The choice was a lie. It was a test of obedience. A predictable component. Fine, I whispered. My voice was trembling. I was trembling. I was so tired of being afraid. I turned away from the forest. I turned away from the monsters I could see. I faced the darkness I couldn't. My handheld radio gave a single, approving chirp. I took one step over the threshold. The instant my boot crossed the line from the outside world to the inside, the world changed. The sound vanished. The click-whirr of the auditors. The tinkle of the music box. The crackle of the white-hot path. The thrum of the domes. Gone, all of it. Replaced by a profound, tomb-like silence. The air changed. The pine and burnt sugar smell was gone. Now only the cold, sterile ozone. The light changed. My flashlight beam, which had been swallowed by the void, now worked. It illuminated a corridor. His clang. The hatch slammed shut behind me. It was so fast, so final. I spun, pressing my hands against it. But it wasn't basalt. It wasn't a door. It was soft. I shined my light. The walls, the ceiling, the floor, everything was a stark, padded, clinical white. The kind of room you put people in so they can't hurt themselves. Or, perhaps, so they can't hurt the room. I was in an asylum. I was alone. The child's voice was gone. Hello? I called out. My voice was deadened by the padding. Hello? A small metal speaker grill in the ceiling, right above me, popped with static. The child's voice returned. But it wasn't a whisper. It was a cheerful, bright, pre-recorded message. Like an amusement park ride. Welcome to Integration, Specialist. We're so happy you've decided to join us. Please follow the white line for processing. I lowered my flashlight beam. The floor was padded, seamless white. There was no white line. There's no line! I yelled up at the speaker. A half-second pause. Our mistake, the voice chirped. You're a red file. Please follow the red line. I shined the light down the endless, padded white corridor. There, starting about 10 feet in front of me, was a line. It was a faint, brownish-red smear, about 3 inches wide. It looked less like paint and more like something that had been dragged. It was a stain. A long, continuous stain that snaked down the white hallway and disappeared around a corner in the distance. I stood there, my stomach turning, the smell of ozone filling my lungs. The speaker clicked back on. The child's voice was no longer a recording. It was a low, hungry whisper. We're almost out of red. We need you to make some more. My flashlight beam cut a weak, trembling cone into the padded white silence. The red line, the stain, was a breadcrumb trail left by a dying man. Make some more. I didn't move. My feet felt like they'd been nailed to the floor. Behind me, the seamless, padded hatch. In front of me, an endless, stained corridor. This was it. This was the processing. The auditors were the factory floor. This was the head office. I'm not. I started, my voice pathetic and muffled by the sound-dampening walls. I'm not moving. The speaker popped. That's okay, specialist. We value a component's autonomy. You can choose to stand there. A new sound. A low, powerful hiss. I looked at the ceiling. A vent, one I hadn't noticed, opened up. A faint, clear, odorless mist began to pour into the room. I didn't need to ask. I coughed, backing away from it, turning, my back hitting the hatch. The mist was coming from vents all down the hall. Or you can choose to walk, the child's voice chirped. The air is purifying. Like the path. You'll be integral in about 90 seconds. Your choice. You're suffocating me, I yelled, pulling the collar of my jacket over my mouth. We're cleaning you. Integration requires a sterile component. Breathe deep. My eyes were watering. My lungs burned. It wasn't poison, not yet, but it was replacing the air. I had no choice. I turned and I walked, half jogging, my head down, my flashlight beam locked on the gruesome red line. I had to stay ahead of the mist. Thump. 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 My boots made dead, soft impacts on the padded floor. I got closer to the stain. The smell hit me. Ozone, alcohol, and copper. The sharp, metallic tang of old blood. Of pennies. I shined the light directly on it. It wasn't just a smear. Oh God, it wasn't. It was clawed. I could see the parallel grooves, the fingernail scratches, where someone had been dragged, fighting all the way. The white padding was shredded in tiny furrows, all stained the same rust brown. The line was a chronicle of agony. He didn't want to go, I whispered, my chest heaving, the mist swirling at my ankles. He was a very uncooperative component. The speaker above me chirped, keeping pace. He broke Rule 5, too. He ran. He ran a lot, actually. It made more line. The hallway turned a sharp right. The mist was thickening behind me, a low-hanging cloud. I rounded the corner and stopped out a room. Not a corridor. A dead end.no. The red line continued, straight up the wall. It went up the padded white wall to a circular, steel hatch in the ceiling. A chute. The person had been dragged, and fed, into a chute. No. You're not a red file specialist, the voice said, and its tone changed. The cheerfulness was gone. It was flat. It was the Ms. Vane voice. That was a misfile. A test. What? I panted, my lungs burning. The red file was him. The day shift guy. The one you spoke to. He was compromised. He warned you. He broke integrity. He had to be recycled. The fog was at my waist now. I could barely see my feet. You're a new file. A category breaker. You stepped off the path. You looked at us. You used the light. You are interesting. A new sound. A heavy, pneumatic clang thunk, not in the ceiling. To my left, a new section of the padded wall slid open. A new corridor. This one was not white. It was pitch black, and the walls were made of that same polished, cold, black basalt as the outside. The white path is for employees, the voice said, its childlike giggle returning, warped and echoing from the new, dark hallway. The red line is for failures. It giggled again, A horrible, wet sound. But this black path, this is for the pieces. Come on, specialist. We want to see what you're made of. And from the deep, total darkness of the new hallway, a single, familiar sound echoed. Click-click-whirr. It wasn't an auditor. It was just the sound of one. A recording. They were luring me. The white mist was at my neck. I couldn't breathe. I held my breath, my flashlight beam cutting into the blackness. The black path. It was the only way. I took a ragged, burning breath of the clean air in the new corridor, and the mist-filled white hall was sealed behind me. Not with a door. A section of the padded wall simply inflated. Like a grotesque, white, soundproof airbag, it swelled and pressed against the opening, sealing the black path. It was watching me. The mist was an anesthetic. The black path was the operating theater. I was in the veins of the machine. The corridor was tight, no wider than the gravel path, but the ceiling was high, lost in the shadows above my flashlight beam. The black basalt was cool to the touch and slick, not with water, but with a thin, oily film. Clack. 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 My bootsteps were offensively loud. All the sound that the white room had absorbed, this black hall amplified. The recorded click-click-whirr stopped. The silence that fell was heavy. It was a listening silence. This way, Breaker, the child's voice whispered. It wasn't from a speaker. It was everywhere. It was an echo that had no source. Don't get lost. We hate it when the pieces get lost. I walked. What else could I do? I held my flashlight beam forward like a shield. The corridor wasn't straight. It curved, gently, endlessly, to the left, like I was walking the inside of a giant, black snail shell. The smell changed. The sterile ozone was replaced by the stink of the auditors, burned sugar, hot metal, and that underlying coppery tang of the red lion. I walked for what felt like a minute. 5. 10. The constant, gentle curve was disorienting. I had no idea where I was in relation to the dome. I could be 50 feet underground. I came to a break in the wall. It wasn't a door. It was a window. A thick, 5-foot-wide circle of reinforced glass, like an aquarium porthole. It was dark. I pressed my flashlight against it. The beam reflected my own terrified, grime-streaked face. We call this the observation deck. The voice giggled, right in my ear. I flinched, smacking my head against the cold glass. It's for our designers. To watch the process. I adjusted the light, angling it. My beam pierced the darkness on the other side. I was looking down. Into a space so vast it defied the geometry of the domes. It was a chasm. A factory floor from a nightmare. It was the space between the three domes, a hollowed-out, subterranean world. Faint blue, electrical sparks flashed in the depths, like lightning in a cloud. FZZT. Thwack. In that half-second of light I saw piles. Mountains. Not scrap. Not just scrap. A mountain of porcelain doll heads, all with their eyes gouged out. A mountain of rusty bicycles, tangled like wire. A mountain of boots. Work boots. Hiking boots. Sneakers. Thousands of them. FZZT. Thwack. The welding light flashed again, brighter. This time I saw the welders. They were huge. Not like the auditors, those 8-foot-tall assemblages. These were titans. They were 40 feet tall, suspended from the shadowed ceiling by massive, oily chains. They were just arms. Huge, multi-jointed, robotic arms ending not in claws, but in a mass of delicate, whirring, clicking tools. And they were building point. One arm would descend, click-click-whirring, into the pile of dolls. It would select a head. Another would dip into a vat of that shimmering, pink sinew. I was watching the assembly line. The day shift guy, I whispered, my breath fogging the glass. You recycled him. Every part finds a purpose, the voice chirped. He was uncooperative, but his components were very high quality. The welding light flashed again. My eyes were drawn to a thing directly below the window. It was a new auditor, laid out on a steel table. It was nearly complete. It was a tangle of rebar, bicycle chains, and a small, four-stroke engine that was idling, puffing out little clouds of blue smoke. But it was the details that made my stomach drop. Lashed to its chest was a cracked, plastic, day-shift guy's thermos. The one he always had. Its head was a cluster of cell phones. Old ones? Flip phones. Smartphones. All bound with zip ties, their broken screens all dark. One of the giant arms descended. It was holding a single, small, familiar object. A porcelain doll's arm.it delicately, surgically, snapped the arm into a socket on the new auditor's shoulder. The arm from my car. The one from the red file component. It's his arm, I said, horrified. You were building this for me to see, not for you. The child's voice corrected, its tone suddenly cold. For it. It's a gift. A reminder. A reward. A reward? The new auditor on the table twitched. The small engine revved. Vroom. Vroom. Its head, the cluster of cell phones, lit up. Not all of them. Just one. An old flip phone, right in the center, its screen glowing a pale, dead green. It started to ring. Not a real ring. A tinny 8-bit, synthesized tinkle. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. My blood turned to milk. The pogo stick auditor. The one with the music box. This was it. This was its birth. You're not human, I breathed. We are AuraTech, the voice replied, sharp and proud. We are integrity. We are efficiency. It paused. My handheld radio, which had been silent for an hour, crackled to life. It wasn't the child's voice. It wasn't Ms. Vane. It was my voice. The mimic. It's not real, it whispered, crackling from my belt, and from the darkness, behind me, down the long black corridor I had just walked. Vroom. 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 The sound of a small, four-stroke engine, revving. The new auditor wasn't just born. It was dispatched. And it was coming for me. My flashlight beam was a pinprick against the glass. The vroom vroom of the four-stroke engine wasn't in the factory. It wasn't an echo. It was in the corridor. Behind me. I spun around, my heart trying to exit my chest. The black basalt hall was empty, curving back into darkness. But the sound was real. It was getting closer. Vroom boing. Vroom boing. The pogo sticks. The engine. It was coming. You're a breaker specialist, the child's voice whispered, saturated with a new, cruel excitement. So break. Let's see you run. I ran. I broke rule number 5. I broke it with prejudice. My boots clacked on the slick, black floor as I sprinted, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly, a chaotic strobe of terror. The corridor was a perfect, disorienting curve, and the engine noise was my only compass. It was behind me, and it was gaining. Vroom boing. Skre boing. The scree was new. It was the sound of the pogo stick's sharpened points digging into the basalt, sparking, fighting for purchase as it rounded the curve at an impossible speed. I risked a look back. The flashlight beam caught it. It was horrible. The rocking horse head, its painted-on smile chipped and leering. The four-stroke engine, strapped to its back with thick, pink sinew, was belching a plume of oily, blue smoke, filling the corridor, making my eyes water. The tinkle 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 of Twinkle Twinkle was a manic, high-speed war song, barely audible over the screaming engine. I did the only thing I knew. I stopped, spun, and planted my feet, aiming the high-lumen beam directly at its head. It accelerated. The light hit the rocking horse glass marble eyes, and they seemed to glow. It didn't shriek. It didn't recoil. Silly, silly component, the child's voice laughed. The sound was so loud it was distorted. That was the auditor program. They're afraid of the light. This is a collector. It follows the light. It's how it finds the lost pieces. The collector let out a new sound, a sound like a steam whistle and a human scream, and leapt. The pogo sticks compressed, and it launched itself 20 feet down the hall, landing with a clang that shook the floor. I screamed, a sound I didn't recognize, and turned, running blind. The flashlight was a liability. The smoke was thick. I couldn't breathe. The vroom boing was right on my heels. I could feel the heat. I saw a light, not my light. An exit. A square of sterile, white light at the end of the black tunnel. I didn't care if it was a trap. It was not here. I threw myself forward, a desperate, diving lunge. I burst through the opening and went sprawling, sliding across a floor so smooth it felt like polished ice. I coughed, my lungs on fire from the smoke, and scrambled to my knees. I looked back. The collector boinged to a perfect, instant stop, its sharpened feet skittering on the basalt, right at the threshold. The black, oily corridor ended in a perfect, razor-sharp line. The new floor was gleaming, white, polished metal, lit from an unknown source above, making it a room of pure, shadowless light. The collector stood there, its engine idling. Vroom, vroom. Its pogo stick legs vibrated with contained energy. Its rocking horse head tilted, its dead marble eyes staring at me. It couldn't cross. Or, it wouldn't. Another invisible fence. Another rule. Outstanding! The child's voice boomed, the acoustics perfect, echoing in a vast, open space. You've successfully completed the filtration phase. Welcome to the integration hub, specialist. I got to my feet, shaking. The room was massive. It was circular, at least 300 feet across. The walls were the same seamless, glowing, white metal as the floor. It was a sterile, white, perfect circle. An operating theater for a god. What is this place? I panted, my voice sounding small. This, the voice said, its tone shifting, is the processor. This is where we listen. Asterisk in the exact, geometric center of the room, there was only one object. It was an old-fashioned, black leather barber's chair. Chrome base, red leather armrests, and heavy, leather straps at the wrists, ankles, and forehead. It wasn't empty. Someone was sitting in it. It was Ms. Vane. She was dressed in the same sterile, black pantsuit. Her hands were gripping the armrests, not strapped in. Her hair was perfect. She was just sitting, staring at me with those unblinking, analytical eyes. Specialist, she said. Her voice not from a speaker but from her. Real. And just as cold. You are very uncooperative. You have generated an unacceptable amount of paperwork. I stood there, panting, my jacket still smelling of the collector's oily smoke. The shadowless, white metal room was utterly silent, save for the vroom 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 of the four-stroke engine idling in the black corridor behind me. Paperwork, I repeated, my voice hoarse. I saw the day shift guy. The red line. Was that paperwork? Miss Vane remained perfectly still. Her composure was absolute. It was more than calm. It was a lack of all things. A vacuum. The day shift component was talkative. A leaky asset, she stated, her voice flat and motionless. He generated waste. You are a different category entirely. You have cost us resources. I just wanted to clock out, I said, a hysterical, small laugh escaping me. You stepped off the path, she recited, as if from a manual. You compromised the perimeter. You viewed assembly. You evaded filtration. You are an anomaly specialist. And anomalies must be reconciled. I stared at the restraints on the barber chair. So that's it. You're going to strap me in? Integrate me? For the first time, an expression crossed her face. It wasn't a smile. It was a glitch. A brief, asymmetrical pulling of her lips, a microsecond twitch of her left eye. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Strap you in? She said. The child's voice, the playful, cruel one, bled into her own. Her voice became a horrifying, layered chorus of adult and child. Silly, silly component. The chair isn't for the pieces. She stood up. She stood up, and the chair was connected to her. Thick, black, ribbed cables snaked from the back of the chair and were not plugged into the floor, but plugged into her. They were fused with her spine, disappearing under her black pantsuit. The chrome base of the chair snapped and retracted into the floor, but the cables remained, dangling from her back like a grotesque, severed tail. She was the processor. The child's voice, I whispered, backing away. That's you. It was, she said. The layered voice was stabilizing, becoming more her, or more it. It was the interface. The human-facing protocol. But it was inefficient. Full integration was necessary. I am upgraded. I took another step back, my heel hitting the edge of the black corridor. The collector shrieked a warning, a mechanical SCRE, and lunged, its rocking horse head snapping at my ankle. I yelped and jumped forward, back into the center of the white room. You see? Vane's voice was now a smooth, synthesized monotone. The collector keeps the pieces on the board. The auditors keep the pieces on the path. And I am the new manager. This is my facility. And you are the final bug in the system. You're a machine, I breathed. I am AuraTech, she corrected. I am integrity. I am efficiency. She took a step towards me. Her shoes made no sound on the white metal. You have been very difficult, she continued. But you have also been instructive. You're a breaker. You're fast. You're resourceful. She was 5 feet away. I held up my flashlight, my hand shaking. Stay back. She looked at the light, then at me. That won't work anymore, specialist. I am not afraid of the light. She raised her right hand. This system has only one rule, she said, her dead, unblinking eyes locked on mine. I watched, in pure, paralyzed horror, as the back of her hand split. The skin peeled back in 4 perfect, wet surgical flaps. It wasn't bone and sinew underneath. It was a dense cluster of black, whirring, clicking tools. A tiny, spinning drill bit. A pair of delicate, snapping pincers. A bright blue arcing taser. She smiled. A real smile this time. A wide, lipless, glitching grimace. Every part finds its purpose. The drill bit in her hand began to spin. A high-pitched, dental zzzzzzzzzzzzz. My entire world was reduced to that sound, her dead eyes, and the vroom 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 of the collector at my back, guarding my only exit. You're a breaker, Vane's layered voice echoed in the sterile room. A category breaker. It's a new file. We created it, just for you. I did the only thing I could. I fought. With a yell that was half sob, I swung the heavy, high-lumen flashlight like a club, aiming for her face. It was an inefficient move. She didn't dodge. She didn't block. She caught it. Her tool hand snapped out. The metal pincers clamped down on the flashlight mid-swing, stopping it with a metallic clang. My arm vibrated with the impact, but I didn't let go. Crude, she slashed hissed. The blue, arcing taser in her palm zapped. A jolt of pure, white-hot agony shot up the flashlight, into my hand, and up my arm. My muscles seized. I screamed. My hair stood on end. My vision whitened. I collapsed, my nervous system fried, dropping the flashlight. It clattered to the white floor, smoking, its lens shattered. My right arm was a useless, tingling, burned piece of meat. I fell backward, scrambling, crab walking away. I pushed myself back. 2FAR.my left boot crossed the invisible threshold. The collector, which had been idling, exploded. Vrmes. It didn't go for my ankle. It leapt. The pogo stick leg, the sharpened, central one, came down like a hydraulic press. I cried out as it impaled my boot, punching straight through the thick rubber sole and pinning my foot to the white metal floor. The pain was blinding, a white-hot spike. I was nailed to the board. The collector's engine idled vroom vroom, its rocking horse head leering down at me, triumphant. All components are assisted, Ms. Vane said. She was walking toward me. Her pace was unhurried. Surgical. She was a doctor approaching a strapped-down patient. She stood over me, a perfect, sterile shadow. I was on my back, pinned, my right arm spasming, my left foot a universe of pain. Her tool hand whirred. The drill bit spun back to life. Zzzzzzzzzzz. You are very interesting, she said, her layered voice laced with something new. Not anger. Not pleasure. Curiosity. You've changed the system. You broke rules that weren't in the manual. She knelt beside me. The drill bit, its tip gleaming, lowered. Not toward my head. Not toward my chest. It hovered over my radio. The one on my belt. This is an old node, she mused. Obsolete. We've been using it to speak to you. To shape you. The mimicry, the auditor voice, a simple, external stimulus. The drill bit lowered. It's not real. The radio on my belt crackled. My voice, Vane froze. The drill bit stopped spinning. Her entire body went rigid. Her head, on its human neck, glitched. A violent, fast, side-to-side tick. It's not real, the radio said again, louder. What? Vane's voice was hers. Just hers. The child's voice was gone. The synthesis was gone. It was the human, HR department voice. And it was afraid. What did you say? I didn't say anything. I panted, the pain from my foot making me dizzy. It's your mimic. It's you. The mimic protocol is me, she whispered, her eyes wide, the unblinking stare finally broken. She was staring at the radio. I am speaking. How are you speaking? The radio on my belt crackled. My voice. Clear as day. How are you speaking? Vane shrieked. It was not a digital sound. It was the sound of a human woman, terrified, trapped, screaming in a way that ripped her own throat raw. It was a sound of pure, undiluted, human terror. The tool hand, the machine part, reacted. It saw the anomaly. It saw the threat. It lashed out. It didn't hit me. It smashed the radio on my belt. The drill bit, the pincers, the taser, all of it, crashed down, obliterating the small, plastic device in a shower of sparks and black, smoking fragments. And the world ended. The shadowless, white, perfect light died. Clang, 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 clang. Absolute darkness. A deafening industrial alarm. And new red light. Emergency strobes, flashing, plunging the room into a repeating cycle of blood red and black. Containment failure. A new, deep, automated voice boomed from the ceiling. System integrity compromised. Protocol 3 initiated. Vane was on her knees, human, screaming, clutching her head. It's in me. It's in my head. Get it out. The black cables in her back were sparking, whipping like snakes. The collector shrieked. The red light illuminated its pogo stick form as it ripped its foot out of my boot, leaving the sharpened spike. It didn't attack. It fled. It boinged back into the black corridor, boing boing boing, until it was gone. I was free. The alarm was blaring. Vane was a convulsing, screaming woman on the floor. The exit was open, and in the black corridor, from which the collector had just fled, a new sound. A deep, heavy thud, and another thud. 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 Something new was awake. Something big was coming up the black path. The red strobe lights painted the room in flashes of blood. Clang. 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 The alarm was a physical blow, a hammer on my skull. My foot was a white-hot star of agony. I looked down. The collector's pogo spike had punched clean through my boot, pinning the empty boot to the floor. In my panic, I had pulled my foot out of the boot. I was in my socks. My left sock was soaked, sticking to the white metal in a rapidly spreading, dark red circle. Thud. The sound was heavier. Closer. It came from the black corridor. Thud. Get it out! Get it out! Vane was on her hands and knees, a woman, screaming, her perfect hair in disarray. She was clawing at the base of her neck, where the black cables fused with her spine. It's in the hub! It heard me! It knows me! She wasn't talking about the thud. She was talking about the mimic. The voice on my radio. Containment failure. The automated voice boomed. Protocol 3 is active. The janitor is deployed. Vane's head snapped up. Her eyes, wide and human and filled with a terror that dwarfed my own, locked on me. No, she whimpered. No, not that. The janitor? I yelled over the clang. What is it? Thud.it was, at the door. The entrance to the black corridor. It doesn't build. Vane choked out, scrambling backward, dragging her sparking, useless cables. It erases. It's the reset. It cleans up the waste. She was looking at me. The anomalies. The thud stopped. A shadow fell across the room. It was a shadow that the red strobing light couldn't penetrate. It stood in the archway, filling it. It was not an auditor. It was not a collector. It was not an assemblage of parts. It was empty. It was shaped like a man, but 10 feet tall, massively built. But it wasn't made of anything. It was a hole. A void. A three-dimensional silhouette cut out of the world. Where the red light hit it, the light died. It didn't reflect. It was absorbed. It had no face, no tools, no weapons. It just was, and the black basalt walls of the corridor, they were gray around the arch, faded. As if the color, the matter itself, had been scoured away by its passage. It didn't look at me. It didn't look at Vane. It tilted its head, as if listening. Then, it took one step into the white room. Thud. The sound was the absence of sound. The white metal floor where it stepped, it grayed. It dulled. The polish was gone. The metal was dead. It's here for the corruption, Vane whispered, her voice broken. It's here for me. She was the bug in the system. The anomaly. The janitor turned its faceless head, its void-like gaze toward her. It knew. It raised a massive, empty hand. Go! Vane screamed at me. Her voice was human. She raised her own hands. The left, human. The right, the machine. The path is cold, she gasped, her eyes screwed shut in effort. The perimeter is down. The main hatch, the padded room, it's just a door now. It's unlocked. The janitor took another slow, ponderous step. Thud. The floor died under its foot. I am still the manager, Vane growled. Her human hand grabbed her machine hand. She was fighting herself. The tool hand twitched, the drill bit spinning. And I am corrupted, she hissed. With a final, human scream of rage, she used the tool hand on herself. She didn't go for the cables. She jammed the whirring drill bit into her own temple. Shh-crunch. Her eyes rolled back. The janitor froze. Vane, the machine part of her, gurgled. Her body convulsed. Protocol 3 rejected. Her layered, synthesized voice boomed. New directive. I am the anomaly. The janitor recoiled. It had orders to clean a bug. It was now facing a feature. The red lights died. The clang-clang alarm stopped. A single, pure, white spotlight snapped on from the ceiling, illuminating Vane's body. She slumped, the drill in her head, the cables detaching from her back with a wet pneumatic schloop. The janitor, the void, just stood there. Confused. Orderless. And from the speakers, the child's voice returned. Clear. Cold. And different. Thank you, specialist. The Vane component was compromised. You have been an excellent diagnostic tool. You are recategorized. A new sound. From every corridor. The black one. The white, padded one. I'd come from. Click-click-whirr. 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 Not one. Not two. A dozen. 100. The child's voice giggled. Your file is no longer breaker. Your new file is bait. Please run.